Okay, one of the things that we need to consider is how do we actually carry out market research? We've kind of looked at what it is, we've thought about why we might do it and the information that it might give us. But if you are a multinational corporation, then you'll probably recruit a very large marketing agency who will have a strong market research team within that, who will carry out extensive surveys, questionnaires, focus groups, and have a whole range of tools and techniques that they can use, and considerable budgets that they will spend on that kind of research. We may be talking millions, we may be talking tens of millions of pounds that go into market research for some of the large organisations that we're all familiar with. Most people sitting in this room will actually be in a very different situation. We may be limited by budget, we may be limited by access to customers, and we may also be limited by time that we've got available. You know, if you're studying and trying to run a small business at the same time, maybe you've got other commitments outside of studying or the workplace, then your time may actually be a very precious resource too. So we're just going to have a look at a couple of things that would be really useful to you when you're starting out to get some feedback in perhaps quite cost-effective and time-effective ways. Well, the first one that actually costs you very, very little is observation. And it's something that we can all be doing all the time. So if you have a particular product that you're thinking of launching into the marketplace, then it's very sensible to go and actually look at what some of your competitors are doing, to actually have a look at some of the store locations, and to actually look at people's buying behaviour. So for instance, if you're thinking of launching a new electrical type of product, there are lots of electrical retailers out there. Simple observation of what people do when they pick them up off the shelves. They look at the packaging. Do they take it out and try it? Do they actually want to see something demonstrated? What types of questions do they ask? So very easily you can actually observe the things that are taking place when potential customers are in a retail environment and see the types of things that are important to them. One of the other things you can do quite easily is to look at competitor advertising. So again, you can look at flyers, you can look at newspaper adverts, you can look on the internet. And what type of information do you think you could collect by looking at competitor advertising? What could you find out?
What is the price and quality?
Okay, so price and quality. Anything else? Absolutely. So are they talking to the same people that you'd like to talk to, or is their target audience someone different? So who is their target audience?
What they make it out to be their unique selling point?
Yeah. What is their USP? What makes them different? Why do they think they stand out from the crowd? Is that something that you're going to do normally within your product or service offering, or is that somewhere that you need to concentrate on as well?
Maybe how they sell our product.
In terms of their distribution?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So what distribution? And again, we think about Amazon, that actually was a distribution channel that made them very different from what their competitors were doing. Anything else?
Target market?
Yeah, I think we've kind of said who's the target audience, that's probably the same thing. Anything else to add?
How much they're spending.
How much they're spending in terms of,
On their advertising.
yeah, that,
Advertising budget.
so for instance, if you can see that your competition are selling perhaps on the advert that comes in between two halves of Coronation Street, it's one of the most expensive advertising slots you can buy on television because of the millions of viewers. If your competition are advertising then, you know they've got one heck of an advertising budget. If you actually see them advertising in your local newspaper with a very small advert, which is 2 by 6 inches in there, you know you're actually looking at a very different approach. So it really gives you an indication of what your competitors are spending on their advertising budgets. So if you do actually look at advertising that your competitors are putting out there, it can give you a huge amount of information without you actually having to spend a penny. You can actually just put your time and resource into that. Okay. Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk to you about is surveys, and a little later we're going to try and write our own survey, so it may be useful to think about some of the ideas that might relate to your own businesses, and we'll move on to an activity shortly. But focus groups are something which can be very structured and very formal and run by marketing agencies in a very structured manner, or it can be something that you set up relatively informal and you can still get good quality information. So if you said to a group of friends, would you come round and, like an hour of your time, serve you tea and coffee, a nice plate of chocolate biscuits, and just tell me what you think about my business idea. If you were to do that, are there any downsides to taking that kind of approach?
Well, because they're your friends, they might be a bit biased.
Absolutely. They might not actually want to tell you that they really don't like something. So if you're giving them what is your passion and your idea, it may be very difficult for them to say, actually, I don't think that would work because of X, Y and Z. You're going to say something similar. And I think you have to be aware that you need to be very careful about who you invite along to those kind of sessions. But is there any ways that you could get around that, do you think?
I don't want to be honest.
You could ask them to be honest, that's true. One of the things that might make it easier for them is if you don't actually run the session. And probably if you're not even there, would actually be quite helpful. But if you could get somebody else to kind of run that session for you, where you put forward a set of questions that you've designed and will give you the information that you require, but somebody else can act as a facilitator to actually get a group of people together for an hour or so, to ask them a series of questions and to instigate some debate and discussion around a set of topics, and that can actually give you some great information. And if you're not there, then people are more likely to be honest and to actually say what they really think. So that's a great way of actually getting information at a really low cost, and actually quite quickly as well. So just from an hour's debate, you can get a huge wealth of information that can point you in a totally different direction that is actually based on fact. And obviously the more of those things that you do, and the more focus groups you can carry out, then the more valid your results are. It's not just from 6 or 8 people that you have in one group session. If you can replicate that process and do it with a number of focus groups, your results become much more valid and grounded. Okay, interviews. Has anybody taken part in market research interviews? Anybody been stopped on the street board or received a telephone call late at night saying, can I ask you about such and such, or questionnaires? Guess what you
I
received?
used to do it actually. You're one of
Those
those
all-
people.
Well, none of us like then.
No, for a charity.
We might let you off. What did you actually do?
It was, for a charity, I just like got information and like told people about what we do.
Okay, so we'll let you off because it was good.
Okay.
But I think you probably realise it's quite hard work
Oh
because
yeah.
people don't actually like chatting to somebody they don't know.
People are so annoyed, they just thought I'm going to get their money in.
Did you do it over the telephone
No,
or
unfortunately not.
face to face? Okay, well, I think people perhaps feel less that their privacy is being invaded less if it's out in the workplace or out shopping or whatever it is. I think it's very invasive when you get a phone call at home and you get asked things. But interviews can give you great information, and there are certainly ways that you can structure it so it's a little bit more user-friendly.